Plenty of time. Down the middle. Guess who? Brock Bowers. Bowers heading to the end zone. Touchdown.
At the one-on-one again. Down here.
And that's where they come. Battling.
Oh, what a grab! What a highlight!
That's all it is. But there's a lot of airspace to cover for Milroe. Still looking. Firing. Near corner. It's caught! Touchdown!
What is going on, everyone? It is College Football Talk here, recording Thursday, August 29th here, 2024. Just me today, but it doesn't matter because we have a full week one preview of all the big games going on this weekend. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast. We're at 91 subscribers, so we're almost there to the 100 mark. Keep on subscribing, guys. If you aren't subscribed already, if you're a returning guest, awesome. Keep on liking and watching the videos. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, follow there. But if you're watching and not subscribed, just hit that subscribe button. As we say all the time, it helps us out. It helps you out because we get to produce more content and then get it out to you. So just make sure you're doing that. And yeah, what are we at? 9 away? Yeah, 9 subscribers away, though. So keep on going. So plan for today. We have the top 5 matchups of the weekend. We're not doing North Dakota State, Colorado, Minnesota, UNC. I think Colorado's going to win, and I think North Carolina's going to win. There's my picks right there. But we have the top 5 games going into the weekend. So that would be Miami, Florida, Penn State, West Virginia, Georgia, Clemson, LSU, USC, and Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Those will be the big games we'll be looking over today, and also have some best bets at the end of the episode. So stick around for that, or just skip ahead to it if you're just looking to do that. But without further ado, we'll get right into it. We kicking off, no pun intended there, kicking off today's episode with Miami at Florida. Currently, these are up-to-date lines. So Miami 2.5-point favorite, over-under sitting at 54.5 heading into this game. This is a 3:30 kick on ABC, I believe. It's going to be a raucous crowd. Probably the best environment Miami's going to play in all year. Miami fans who say or talk about like how, the crowd's not going to be anything, like that's coming from a fan that can't fill out a stadium already at home. So regardless of that, it's going to be an unbelievable environment. I'm going to be there, boots on the ground, watching that. I kind of have a feeling it's going to be a really sloppy game, or it's going to be just a really tight game where not a lot of people are going to be like, it might be, I feel like a more conservative game. Nothing's going to be overly crazy, possibly just afraid of, turning the football over in critical spots. And you don't want to give the other team an advantage in any way. So, but I'll take a quick deep dive into this. My early thoughts on this game is it's going to be a battle of the trenches because Miami has a legit defensive line up front. They do lose guys, but they also are able to replace, and they're really good on the ends with Ruben Bain. They bring back, or Akeem Mesidor comes back from injury. He was injured all year last year, so he get him back alongside with Bain, who stepped in and just dominated last year. He had 7.5 sacks, 12.5 tackles for loss, a complete game record. So they get another year with him. And then the D-line, not to mention, you do lose a couple guys, but they did transfer in a bunch of guys, so that's going to help out there. So the D-line is on par, like above on par, like Birdie, really good stuff coming out of Miami. My question is going to be that secondary. They lose 4 starters, and are they going to be able to backfill that? It's the one spot where I think that if Florida's able to take advantage of maybe hitting those deep shots down the field. You didn't see that a lot last year with Florida. There's a lot of intermediate stuff, trying to go side to side with the offense. A lot of like wide receiver motions, just a lot of unnecessary movements, in my opinion, which kind of derailed a bunch of the drives. You didn't see a lot of those 20+ yard long balls. I want to see if they can attack that, and that's going to squarely put on the shoulders of this O-line that, they lose 2 starters, but they were able to fill those positions decent in the portal. They have got to protect pass pro. I mean, they ranked 115th last year nationally in pass protection. I mean, Graham Mertz was getting sacked every other play. So that has to improve. And if it doesn't against a legit one of the best D-lines that Florida's going to play all year, this could be a long day for Florida because this is going to completely derail what they want to do. They're going to want to run the ball. Okay, Montreal Johnson, depth chart just got released yesterday, at least the first one, and he's there. So, he's going to be clear to play, which is awesome because they were scared that he was going to miss with the knee injury he had a couple weeks ago. So but it doesn't matter if he's in the backfield or Walter Payton's in the backfield. If nobody's there to block, then, tough going there. And especially if you want to attack that secondary for Miami, you're not going to be able to if Graham Mertz is on the ground. So has to show up in a massive way. Florida's got to hit a deep shot, score quickly, I think, to keep the crowd in it, keep them going. And if they can force turnovers, this is, again, that secondary for Florida. They bring in Asa Turner. They bring in some other guys. They're trying to get more veteran experience on this defense that they hope helps out with the younger guys who played a lot last year, because tackling's got to get better, pass coverage has got to get better, and just anything pass related wise. I mean, they were terrible. They ranked 120th in yards per attempt, 111th QB rating, 123rd in explosive pass plays. Got to force turnovers. I think Cam Ward, as great as he is, he will turn the ball over. He is susceptible to fumbling it. He's susceptible to throwing interceptions. If Florida wants to win this game, I think they're going to need at least 2 turnovers in some sort of fashion. And now vice versa for Miami, I think Miami's got to score quickly. I think the faster you can get the crowd out of it, the better. Because take Tennessee game last year. Tennessee scored first, fast, but was never able to just kind of keep going. And then they kind of stalled out. And then Florida was able to just kind of do whatever they want. Crowd got into it, and it was never the same for Tennessee. They could never respond. They ended up getting blown out. If Miami can't score fast and, get the crowd out of it and just dominate the line of scrimmage, they're going to be in trouble. Because this is no game. It's not, you're not playing some cupcake week 1. You're messing around no matter how up or down Florida's going to be. You're in their territory. The swamp is no joke. And if you're just going to mess around and start turning the football over, get cute on offense, and Florida, you're just giving Florida more lives. It's like a team that you need to put away early. Otherwise, they're just going to hang around, and then they're going to beat you. So I think Cam Ward will have a good day. I think he's going to be able to take advantage of that defense, that secondary at least, to some degree. I think it's also going to squarely fall back on that line of scrimmage. I think if they can run the ball effectively, Damian Martinez is going to be, he's one of the best transfer pickups from this past class, coming from Morgan State. I mean, he was, where was it? He rushed for over 2,100 yards, 16 touchdowns in the 2 seasons he was there. So he's got legit everything across the board. So if they can get him rolling early and he just starts dominating on the ground, and before you know it, I mean, he's at 120 yards rushing by the third quarter, I think we're all going to know who's going to win this game. I mean, it squarely falls. This line of scrimmage game is going to be fascinating to watch because, Florida lost some guys. They lost Princely to Ole Miss. You bring in some guys. Oh, 1 second, I think. They lost some guys. But, are they going to be able to, push and stop the run? They do. I mean, Desmond Watson comes back. He hasn't really ever made a difference, though. And that's what I think they're hoping on him doing. They do bring in, Joey Slackman. LJ McCray is also going to be in. He's a big 5-star they signed along with DJ Lagway. Cam Jackson's back in the middle. They're going to have to dominate. And they got to, if they can make Miami one-dimensional and then fall back on that Cam Moore turnover issue and make him throw the ball or turn the ball over, Florida's going to have a really good chance to win. Graham Mertz is going to have to play well. I think turnover battle and line of scrimmage is the two keys to this game. I do worry about Miami maybe falling behind early and not being able to recover. We've seen teams do this when they go on the road, especially at Florida, with just how and crazy that environment gets. And that worries me some with Miami, no matter how good they're going to be. Like, I think they're going to be in the playoffs. Like, I think they're going to ACC title. I think they're going to win the ACC. But it's Saturday, a day where they could fall. Absolutely. And I'm leaning that way. I think that 2.5 number is too good not to pass up. So you're giving me Florida. You pretty much take Florida on the money line at that point. And I think I'm going to end up doing that. But I do like Florida in this game. I think 21-17 is the game, or is the score. I think it's a lower scoring game. I'm just fascinated to see the line of scrimmage. If Miami's D-line can just dominate, or will Florida find a way to kind of take advantage of that secondary? Because, again, if they can, then they're going to have a good chance to win. But I do think it's a close game back and forth, but maybe a turnover late and just a score really is the difference maker. Yeah. But very good game. I think this is possibly game of the week just across the board. No matter all these good games, like this might be the most competitive. So, all right, moving on to our next game. This one's a noon kick. As soon as my thing stops messing with it. Alrighty, we're gonna move on here. I got all my notes here, so I'm gonna go back and forth. But Clemson and Georgia, noon kick, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and these two teams last met back in 2021. It was in Charlotte. I was at the game, and one of the best crowds you'll find. Neutral site games can be okay depending on who's playing and where it's at. You get these ticky-tack games out west. It's not as good. You get them in the heart of the South, Atlanta, Charlotte, Nashville, and Miami, wherever you go. I think those ones are better atmospheres. I'm not in favor of neutral sites really in general. I do prefer home and home, but you take what you can get. Anyway, so Clemson, Georgia. This is a noon kick on ABC. Kicks off the day. Comes right before the Florida-Miami game. But Georgia's a 13.5-point favorite. 48.5 is the over-under. And to me, you have two stories. You have one team, Georgia, who, rinse, repeat, kind of feels like a redemption almost type of year. You have a better taste in your mouth from last end of the year. You lose to Bama. You still feel like you're still one of the best 4 teams. You don't get in just how things kind of shook. But then you go and you dominate Florida State. Coming into this year, you reload in portal. You bring in those big guys out of the high school ranks. Now you're ready to roll. You get Carson Beck back, which was the biggest thing, kind of circle around him. And then you have Clemson, who, again, does not use the portal. They refuse to do it. It's just a Dabo thing at this point. He just refuses to use the portal. And eventually you feel like it's going to come back and bite him in the butt. The dynasty is long gone. They went 9-4 last year. They did rebound well at the end of the year, but it's still, for probably most Clemson fans, probably a disappointing year still. You do get the second year now with Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik, who had so much expectations coming into the year, and it just never panned out. I mean, the offense got worse. And so maybe you get it turned around. You're losing a bunch of guys or some guys out of the wide receiver room. You're losing some guys out of the running back room. They're going to have guys step up. The wide receiver room is the biggest question for Clemson. The defense is going to be outstanding. I mean, the D-line is NFL caliber with Peter Woods and TJ Parker. The linebacker room is going to be really good. They do have to replace losing Jeremiah Trotter, but Barrett Carter, Wade Woodaz, and Sammy Brown, they'll be manning that front, and they should do really good. Secondary is a little shaky, and it's probably not the best team to be heading into the year facing when your secondary is not proven. So, especially at the corner position, safety spots locked up pretty well with RJ Mickens and Khalil Barnes, but that safety group is wide open after they lost a few guys either to the portal or to the draft. So there's questions there. There's questions in the wide receiver room because, again, they haven't had a star caliber receiver since probably Amari Rodgers or Will Shipley, T. Higgins, Hopkins. Trying to think, there was another guy. But you get the point. There hasn't been that guy. Now, they do bring in a guy named Bryant Wesco who stood out among anybody else at the spring game. He's a 5-star freshman. They really hope that he can become something. Tyler Brown, Adam Randall to kind of highlight them. They do have a few other guys. Jake Brenningstool comes back at the tight end spot, so they really like him as another offensive weapon. I mean, I don't know. I'm really iffy with Clemson. Klubnik, I thought he would be really good. I mean, I remember when he came in for the ACC title game a couple years ago against UNC, and he just lit them up. Now, Matt Brown did say after the game they didn't prepare for him, so maybe if they did, they played a little bit better. But regardless of that, he played outstanding. And then, you have all these expectations of him coming in, new OC from Garrett Riley, who was just at TCU when they went to the national title. And so your expectations are really high. And then all of a sudden, it just never pans out. I mean, Klubnik turned the ball over, turnover machine last year. He had 14 in total. He lost 5 fumbles, including, and he also had 9 interceptions. He only had 19 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. That's not a good ratio to have. They were just not good at all offensively. 112th in yards an attempt. Explosive pass plays, they ranked 129th. They ran the ball mediocre, ranked 43rd. Phil Moffitt is going to be that number 1 guy at that running back spot. He's a power back. He had a really good game against Notre Dame last year, ran for over 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. So there's positives there. I think the O-line is going to be improved. They do have to replace their star center, but I think they're going to be able to do that. They do because they get 4 guys back, and they bring in Matt Luke as the new offensive line coach, who is proven to be good wherever he goes. Remember, he was at Georgia when they won the national title for one of those teams. He was a head coach at Ole Miss. He's been all over. So I like that addition. But outside of that, I'm just worried that they just don't have the weapons to score enough, especially against Georgia. And that's where I'm already leaning Georgia to begin with there. I haven't even got to the Georgia part. Georgia, Carson Beck coming back. I mean, early Heisman front runner. I mean, he's one of the top 3 guys. What they do at the running back spot, this is the one spot where if Clemson wants to hang around, I think they're going to have to somehow dominate their line of scrimmage and kind of make Georgia one-dimensional, because the running back room is going to be a little thin. There's still no word on what they're going to do with ETN. There was rumors they were going to suspend him for the game, even though his charges got dismissed. Roderick Robinson had toe surgery earlier this week, so he's going to be out for the game. So it means Nate Frazier, Andrew Paul, Cash Jones are going to be 3 guys for sure. ETN still up in the air. I don't think it'll make it too big of a difference, because you can also use Dylan Bell, who's kind of like that Swiss Army knife. Either put him in the backfield, send him out wide as the receiver, like he usually is. I think this is a big game that Georgia and Carson Beck can attack that secondary, especially the corner spots with Colby Young. They bring him in from Miami for these kind of things. Dominic Lovett's back. They can use London Humphreys as the speedster. Stretch the field. I think they're what they can do, and I think they're going to be able to do that really well. The offensive line's, a Joe Moore Award type offensive line. That'll be really fascinating too, because if Georgia's tackles can just kind of neutralize Woods and Parker and those other guys, then Clemson's really going to have a hard time because, again, if you're not going to be able to get to Beck, I don't know how you're going to stop this team. And like that's what Alabama was able to do last year. Think walking back, watch that game. They controlled the line of scrimmage. They pushed Georgia around, and they did whatever they wanted to. And if you can't do that, Carson Beck's going to shred you to pieces. No matter who's playing running back, who's at wide receiver, like that's just is what it is. I do think where Clemson could possibly look at attacking Georgia if they can. That secondary is a little young. I mean, talent is not the question. I think it's more just experience because you do bring Dalen Ever back. You lose that big three, Tyke Smith, Javon Bullard, and Kamari Lassiter. You're going to have to replace those with guys like, Dan Jackson, Ellis Robinson, fourth, KJ Bolden. Malachi Starks is back, though, so he's going to be fine back there. Jonel Aguero, Jillian Humphreys. Like, talent is not the issue. I mean, I think it's more just like, do they have enough game reps to be ready to roll? And I think they're going to be all right. It's really the D-line, which has been the biggest question for Georgia going into the year, if they could somehow cause havoc. Remember last time these two teams played, Georgia had 7 sacks against Clemson. Can they wreak havoc again? Michael Williams, Chaz Chambliss. You're going to have guys like Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Britsit up in the middle with Jordan Hall. Jamal Jarrett's up there. And then, the linebacker room, beyond fine with. I mean, you do not have to worry about them at all. It's young, it's experienced, and it's ready to roll. CJ Allen's going to be manning that. Smile Munden is the veteran guy. You're going to also have guys like Raylan Wilson. Troy Bowles is going to now probably get some more playing time this year. And not to mention, they also have freshmen, 5-star freshmen, possibly just sitting on the bench waiting for their turn as well, like Justin Williams and Chris Cole. So I have no issue with that. I just think that Georgia is going to be too much in this game. I think Clemson may score some, but I just don't see in how they're going to be able to go stride for stride with Georgia. And that's why I'm going to take Georgia. I think that they're going to win. The line is 13.5. So I'm trying to do some quick math here. 2, that's 4. Oh, yeah. So I have them winning 34-17, which would give Georgia the cover. So I guess if you're taking it, I'm not gonna bet on this one. I'm gonna stay away. But because you worry about some backdoor cover if the game gets out of hand and they just start playing their backups. So I'm gonna take Georgia to win, and yeah. But I think Clemson's gonna be decent this year. I just think it's a bad move or just a bad spot kind of be in. I think they probably would have preferred to maybe play a lesser opponent. It doesn't even have to be like an FCS school, but like maybe just kind of an easier maybe opponent to kind of see where you're at. But then again, they'll never say that. And they probably never want to do that because you always want to test yourself with the best. And this is the best. So, all right, moving on. Georgia and Clemson are done. So we'll move down to Penn State at West Virginia, a very intriguing matchup to say the least. This one's also at noon. This one's going to be on Fox. At West Virginia, so Milan Pusker Stadium. This two teams played last year. Trying to find my thing. And Penn State won 38-15, if I'm not mistaken. It was all Nittany Lions that game. It was one of the few games where Drew Aller really exceeded. Threw for over 300 yards, had a couple touchdowns. And West Virginia just was not really able to do much. So we're going to see if maybe a change of scenery, change of venues, another year Garrett Greene being the full guy. And the big question for me here is West Virginia has a big questions are O-line and this secondary. West Virginia lost 4 guys in the secondary. And the O-line has to see if that young experience pays off, because if not, you got guys like Abdul Carter. What am I going to say? Excuse me. Oh, I forgot. Let me see here. Oh, here we go. You got guys like Abdul Carter, Kobe King, Tony Rojas, Curtis Jack. No, he went pro. But you have guys on that D line that will just kind of take over, and you're not going to be able to do anything. I do think they're going to have more success with running the football. CJ Donaldson's a very, very good back, and they also have White, who's kind of like the speedster. So you have to run that thunder and lightning kite combination. So if they can run the ball effectively, this is going to be a very close game because you're going to be able to eat clock as well as score points. And that's going to be big because do I think West Virginia's wide receiver room is the greatest in the world? No. But I do think that if you're able to run the ball, play action becomes a thing. RPO, Garrett Greene's legs are going to be a big thing in this because if he can kind of, get outside the pocket, make a couple plays on his own, stretch the defense going vertical or horizontally, it'll open up those holes inside now where you can kind of take advantage of that with Donaldson or White. I think Hudson Clement, Preston Fox, Jaden Bray, they're going to have to step up in some way. Attack those Penn State secondary guys, especially the new guys who coming in, Jalen Kimber, AJ Harris, Cam Miller. Test them early, see what they're all about. Especially, and if you can get the crowd going into this one, this is kind of like the Florida game, like underdogs at home. Can you keep the crowd in it is going to be the big one. And that's going to be big question right there. I think Penn State, though, new OC, they bring in Andy Kotelnicki. He's going to want to try to do more RPO game, which is good. But is this the game where it's all going to work? Because we've seen sometimes where you bring in a new OC and you kind of each game 1 or 2, it just doesn't look right. You don't probably want this to be the game where everything's not meshing well. And Drew Aller goes out and struggles. I think that you're going to have to rely on those running backs, a really good dynamic duo in the backfield with Singleton and Katron Allen. So if they can just run the ball really well, kind of like how they did last year, they will be, I think it's going to take some pressure off of Aller to try to make plays, and they're going to be fine. Probably control the clock and win this game. If West Virginia can get a couple turnovers, I think turnovers, again, are going to have to be a big difference maker in this game. And then capitalize on the turnovers, not just get them, but they need to score and score touchdowns. Because you can't, I don't think if you start settling for field goals, then you're in a tough spot. Passing game's got to be more effective. And that all falls back on the O-line having to be better than pass pro, because passing game wasn't, they were decent, but I want to see even better than 91st in the country as far as overall passing attack. And that's going to be having to stop those game wreckers on the outside and those linebackers trying to blitz. So we'll see, especially, again, speaking of new OC, new DC, Tom Allen is the new guy at Penn State. New schemes. Again, will it all work game 1, especially on the road? It's one thing to be playing at home against another cupcake and kind of figuring it out, getting all the kinks out. It's another thing to be on the road, high impact game where you're playing a border team, your state border team, and the last thing you want to do is lose. So if West Virginia can win this game, it will propel them to possibly going 4-0 heading into the bye for that big stretch where they got to play Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State, and Arizona. If they lose, it's not the end of the world, but it could derail some hype or momentum that they kind of started building. I think that it's going to be a really close game again. I think West Virginia is going to make enough plays in this game. I'm just worried that the offensive line, or not the offensive line, the offensive scheme, new OC, not enough weapons on the outside, because you lose Lambert Smith, you'll lose they lost 4 other receivers too that transferred out. They do bring in Julian Fleming, and Harrison Wallace is going to have to step up, but is that going to be enough? And what happens if they can't run the ball well? What happens is West Virginia's D-line just kind of stonewalls them, limits them, keeps them under the 120 yards rushing. Is Drew Aller going to be good enough to where he's going to have to win the game when the game's on his shoulders? Didn't see it last year when he played games like Michigan or Ohio State or Ole Miss. Can he do that? And this is going to be a massive road test. He wasn't able to do it last year. That's why I'm going to lean West Virginia. I think the crowd's going to play a giant factor in this. I think that the defense steps up. I think it's almost going to be like a bend, don't break mentality. And we'll see. But I like West Virginia 27-23. Mountaineers get it done. All right, moving on to Notre Dame at A&M. This is the Saturday night game on ABC. Yes. As the Aggies will play host to the Fighting Irish. Fighting Irish come in number 7 in the country. A&M is 20th. This will be the first game for Mike Elko as the head coach. He was there as the DC last time he was an Aggie. So, how do we break this down? Well, let's start with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, you bring in Riley Leonard, new OC as well, and Mike Denbrock comes from LSU. Remember, Mike Denbrock was there last year as the OC when had a Heisman Trophy winner. So his resume is there. And, they made him the highest paid offensive coordinator this year. So they hope for results, especially Notre Dame. I think you're going to see a lot more, run RPO game, a lot more inside zone, less play action. Historically, Notre Dame has been that bunch set, a lot of tight end usage. Not going to see this. You're going to see a lot more spread out game using that skill set that Riley Leonard brings. Because remember, he is a very mobile quarterback, very dual threat type. The issue that he has raced into is that he can't stay healthy enough. Injuries have plagued him. I mean, he missed the spring game because of rehabbing an ankle injury. He was out most of the year last year because of injury. Can he stay healthy? Because if he could stay healthy, I think Notre Dame's going to have a really good year this year. Are they going to be able to run the ball really well? I mean, they're taking on an A&M front that's, while they did lose a bunch of guys, they also retained a bunch. And not to mention Notre Dame, their starting tackle Charles Joshua out for the year. He tore his ACL. And that's not very good because the rest of the O-line has a combined 6 starts. So not very good when you're really your first big game, or your first game is at A&M in front of 110,000, especially when you got guys like Nick Skirton, Hicks, and Turner all up front, just look ready to just ruin your night. And they don't, and Notre Dame doesn't have that running back like difference maker like they did last year with Audric Estime. So it's going to be a running back by committee with Jeremiah Love and Jordan Price. Will they have a wide receiver that becomes that difference maker? I think it could be Chris Mitchell, who comes from Florida, or FIU, where he had over 1,000 yards last year. They did bring in some receivers out of the portal. Jaden Thomas, Tyler Brown is going to be some of the guys that are going to be headlining that. But it's just tough because if you can't run the ball well, it's really going to have to be, I think you're going to have to kind of work the perimeter some, because that you're probably going to have trouble running the ball up in between the tackles. So you're going to have to somehow stretch A&M on the outside. I think where you can attack A&M definitely is the secondary, kind of like Clemson or West Virginia. If you can attack the secondary is very unproven. They do bring in a couple guys. They did because they lost 3, but that's still a team that was 105th in explosive pass plays last year. It killed them in some games. And if that's how Notre Dame wants to win this game, they're going to have to connect on a deep shot or 2, or just somehow maybe break a tackle and just break off a big one. Because other than that, like A&M kind of controls every other kind of major category that would kind of send a game one way or another. And that tackle loss is just killer, because now you lose one of your top guys. Your offensive line's inexperienced, and you have to go into uncharted territory to play one of the better defenses that you're going to probably see all year long, because Notre Dame's schedule is not very tough at all. And that makes this game even more important, because if they lose this, if they're going to have a tough time, even if they build a playoff type resume, is it going to be enough to actually get in? Because teams like Louisville and Stanford and Miami, Ohio, and Purdue, Georgia Tech, they're not going to be the difference makers, at least right now. It could now, maybe a couple months from now, they do, and that's awesome for Notre Dame because they need it because it's resume builders. But for now, I think A&M has that clear advantage defensively. Connor Wegman has to stop turning the football over. If you can do that and stay healthy, Connor Wegman's going to be a great quarterback there. I think he was the best. You saw when he was out last year because of injury, you clearly saw how much they missed him because the offense was just not the same. And so Wegman's back, fully healthy. Colin Klein's the new OC. You saw what he's done before at Kansas State. It's been really good. Running backs are all returning. They have a big three-headed monster. The wide receiver room's good. It's not great, but they do, and it lacks some depth. Is who's going to step up now for A&M? We talked about with Notre Dame with Chris Mitchell. He's going to step up. But, outside of the big three with Walker, Muhammad, and Thomas, do they have another guy that can maybe emerge as that fourth? And what happens if one of those other guys goes down? Does the receiver room just kind of deplete? Questions that they're going to have to figure out probably along the way this season. But as far as this game goes, I do think that I think that if Notre Dame or if A&M can make a couple plays and run the ball well, it's going to be tough because Notre Dame does have, I'd say their best strength is at the D-line spot. And so they're almost going to need to do what Notre Dame, I'd say, needs to do. And that's kind of work the perimeter, jet sweeps, maybe get some RPO action going on, maybe some sweeps, counters, outside zones, like something to kind of keep them going lateral. Again, maybe opening up some holes inside that you can maybe take advantage of. As far as predictions goes, I just think it's going to be too much for Notre Dame. I think that it's very close, but again, I think A&M's going to win this. I think that injury at the tackle spot is just too big to not overlook. And so I'm going to take A&M to win. Obviously, you take them to cover. Or I guess you don't say obviously, but I do think they're going to cover lines 2.5. So you get that under. I get it before if it ever does move up because you still have the hook. But 24-20 for me. So they do cover in my scenario. And it actually hits the under, which if you're taking that, there you go. But again, lower scoring because I think you're going to see a lot of maybe with especially the new headcom system that they're using. You could start seeing more huddles, slowing down the pace of play. So especially, teams like this that probably want to control clock more, probably a lower scoring game. This could be a game where it's just kind of snoozing along. Maybe just it's 13-10 for the most part. And then all of a sudden, maybe a big play kind of sparks it. So, but A&M, I would think, does that instead of Notre Dame. Good game, though. I think this year is finally a year in week 1 where from noon to 8:30, 10 o'clock kickoffs, like we have good games across the board. We're not, headlining. Like the CBS game of the week is Ohio State versus Akron, and Ohio State's a 50.5 point favorite. Like that's not what nobody wants to watch that unless you're somehow betting on that. So I think finally this year, it's not just like a game or two. Like we get 5 headliners, not to mention the Monday night game and some other games that maybe are not as, not as high up, but still sneaky good ones. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma State, South Dakota State, sneaky one. Colorado, North Dakota State tonight. Just little added like sprinkles onto your ice cream sundae. But moving on now to our final game. This is the Sunday night game. This is LSU, USC. We were talking about neutral sites earlier. This one's being played in Vegas. So, you're looking for reasons why neutral sites may stink. There you go. Like, I don't want to see LSU going to Vegas to play a game. Bring USC. But Lincoln Riley's scared. So, I guess that would be the reason for that. But looking at this game, LSU, you're coming off a year, you had a Heisman winning quarterback, you had explosive receivers who both went in the first round, and you had a defense that couldn't stop anybody. I mean, I could have gone out there and probably scored a touchdown against that defense, and that's saying a lot. I mean, they were just historically bad in about every category. Not good at all. The one thing I'll say, they do bring in Blake Baker, who they got from Missouri, who was a heck of a hire. They do bring back 71% of their defense, which I could think is good. Hear me out. It was a lot of young guys, especially in that secondary. And now you get an actual defensive coordinator who knows what he's doing. Pair that with a bunch of experienced young guys, and you might get something better. Also, the linebacker room is going to be good. Harold Perkins is back. They need to figure out what to do with him. He's going to be playing middle linebacker now full time. Let's see if he's can return to that 2022 form, excuse me. And they get Greg Penn, the Weeks brothers, so Witt and West Weeks. So if they can kind of just play mediocre ball on defense, this is a really good team that could be a playoff dark horse. Garrett Nussmeier finally gets his shot as the quarterback one. You saw him in the bowl game against Wisconsin. He threw for over 390 yards, had a game-winning touchdown drive. At the end of that one, played really well. Wide receiver room, Kyron Lacey's going to have to be number one guy. Who's going to be that number two? Is it going to be CJ Daniels? Is it going to be Chris Hilton? Who's going to be that number two guy? Because it can't all fall on Kyron Lacey. If it does, they're not going to have a very successful successful game. They're going to need to run the ball well. I think they're going to be able to, especially against USC. And that offensive line is a Joe Moore type of winning team led by Will Campbell. They bring back all 5 of the guys from last year. 4 starters. And they replace the one, but it's still going to be good. Really good, actually. So I have no issue there. I think they're going to run the ball really well. And they should control the line of scrimmage. It's going to be if they turn the ball over a bunch and the defense can't stop anyone. Because if Miller Moss can just kind of go in there and did what he did against Louisville in the bowl game and just start hucking touchdowns to Deuce Robinson, Zechariah Branch, this is going to be a 45-42 type game where neither defense is going to be able to stop each other. And, you're going to see an absolute shootout, which for the audience is outstanding. I'm all for that. I don't think that Deonta Lynn or Lincoln Riley, Brian Kelly, Blake Baker, I don't think they're going to be fans of that, though. And, can LSU's secondary step up and use what they learned from last year to not do what they did and play better this year? We'll definitely see. Because, again, like last year, they went 10-3. And they didn't make the playoff. And they had a Heisman-type quarterback. And if they had a mediocre defense, they probably would have been in the national title game. Just put that into perspective. But as far as USC goes, Miller Moss, I think he's going to have a really good game because I think he's going to be able to exploit that defense and that secondary, especially with defensive line being an issue for LSU. If LSU can't get home, it's just going to make things easier for USC. You're going to have to use your weapons on the outside, like I said, with Branch and Robinson. Also bringing in Jacoby Lane, Kyron Hudson. It's a good tight end group too. It's offense is not going to be an issue, I don't think, this year for USC. I think it's going to be more of defensively and controlling the line of scrimmage. They bring in Lynn, you bring in some better guys to help out on the line, like Nate Clifton from Vanderbilt. Bear Alexander comes back. They're going to need to see more of him. Didn't see as much as I wanted to from him last year. Remember how high of a recruit he was to Georgia. Didn't get the playing time, transfers out west, and just never kind of did much again last past year. If he can kind of figure something out, that's going to be big time for him. Can the secondary make any difference? Because, again, as bad as LSU was defensively in the past game, USC was just even worse. 119th in quarterback rating, 200. They get allowed over 240 yards passing a game. They were 109th in completion percentage, just terrible across the board. And they couldn't stop anybody running the ball. And this is why I think LSU is going to win this game, because LSU is going to be able to run the ball really effectively, I think. And so if you can't control the line of scrimmage, sorry, you're not going to win. because the bigger, the better. The bigger and the stronger teams are always going to win. Because if my O-line can push you off the ball and create a giant hole for my running back to just exploit and break off a 10 to 15-yard run every couple runs, then I'm going to have a really good chance of winning this game. And that's why, as much as I am looking forward to seeing how good USC's offense is going to be, I just think LSU is going to be too much. Brian Kelly historically does a lot better year threes. If you look back where he's been, year three's always been the big year for him. So I think this is the big year three. Will we see any improvement now in that defense? So I'm going to take LSU to win. Line is 4.5, over under 63.5. I think LSU is going to win and cover 37-24 is my prediction for the game. All right. Finally, best bet time. So my best bets, I got 4 of them. I have Texas A&M minus 2.5. I have UF on the money line plus 130. I have Oklahoma State minus 9.5. They have I said it earlier. They have South Dakota State coming in. As long as they don't do what they did against South Alabama last year, I think they're going to be able to control the ball. You just hand it off to Ollie Gordon and let him go to work. I think Alan Bowman, as long as he doesn't turn the ball over a bunch, they should take care of business. And then Tennessee's a 38.5-point favorite this weekend against Chattanooga at home. I think this is a nice tune-up game for Nico Imaliava. You got your receiving room back to full strength with Squirrel White, Brew McCoy leading that front, and then Deontay Thornton. So they're going to be able to kind of dictate terms and do a bunch, and as well as run the ball really well. People always think Tennessee is a just high caliber, just pass only, like 4 verticals, shoot it down the field. They run the ball extremely well. And that's led by, last year it was Jalen Wright who dominated the line of scrimmage. This year, Dylan Sampson's going to be that guy. And you use Imaliava's legs because he is going to be able to do that. They should dictate terms offensively, and then defensively, James Pearson, that group is going to be keeping Chattanooga off the board, we'll say. So those are my picks. Use them or not, that's all. But that is week 1 preview. So if you guys like what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave your comment below if you disagree or agree with anything. Like the video on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify, subscribe there as well. Really looking forward to this week and just having college football back in general. Kicks off tonight as I'm recording this on Thursday. So really can't wait to watch all the games. I'm being at the Miami-Florida game. I'm probably going to get a bad sunburn. It is what it is. It's the sacrifices you make for college football, for sure. But College Football Talk will be back next week, sometime early in the week for week 1 recap before we kick back to week 2 preview. So really looking forward to the games. Hope you guys are too. Make sure you guys subscribe and like and watch the video. Be back next week for recap. Until then, this is Hunter. Peace out.